sensational hosts, Gilsey and Drusilla. Welcome to Moon Moment, the podcast where we discuss the Sailor Moon canon for what we affectionately call, you guessed it, Moon Moments.
Moments that we feel exemplify what Sailor Moon stands for and represents. Now, without further ado, let's jump right in. Today we are discussing episodes 10 through 14. For those of you that need a little refresher on what those episodes are.
Wait, hold on. I don't think they're 10 through 14.
Is it not? You're right, it's 14 through... I updated what our next episode will cover, which is 20 through 24.
Oh, okay.
But I forgot to update. Okay. Today we're discussing episodes 15 through 19. For those of you that need a little refresher on what those episodes are, in our first episode, the Senshi defeat an eco-terrorist, though Rei is just trying to get payback for interrupting her date with Mamoru. Speaking of, Mamoru is actually in college? What a creep. I'm sure we'll have some things to say about that. Next, everyone's gone bananas for a contest to sew a wedding dress, while Usagi proclaims that she's going to be married before she's 25. Spoiler alert, canonically, she is, so way to make your dreams come true, Usagi. The following episode sees Nephrite target a photographer. The ensuing battle puts Luna, Mercury, and Mars out of commission, and with Tuxedo Common nowhere in sight, Sailor Moon shows herself to be surprisingly competent. Who knew? We sure didn't. In the fourth episode, Usagi's little brother gives in to toxic masculinity and accidentally breaks a doll given to him by a classmate. But the episode never addresses it, so why should we? Also, Nephrite totally shuts down Beryl, and I'm surprised he's not blasted on the spot. Finally, Nephrite impersonates Tuxedo Common in order to draw out Sailor Moon, which works because, of course it does. But Naru gets caught in the crossfire. And in a shocking reveal, Tuxedo Common is revealed to be Mamoru Chiba. Who would have guessed? Everyone. The answer is everyone. So, before we dive into our mood moments, I want to say that watching, episodes all the way up until this batch, so the first 14 episodes, it's been a very nice thing for me. Watching the subs and the dub, just, it's like a nice trip down memory lane. Nostalgia, all that jazz. It's been very nice. But there's something about this batch of episodes. I enjoyed them so much. I laughed so many times. There's a scene in the Viz dub in episode 19 that I started laughing and couldn't stop. Because just the tone that the voice actor gives Tuxedo Common, I just wasn't expecting it, and I died. You're speaking to a ghost now. And I think the reason for me enjoying this batch of episodes so much was because of Tuxedo Mask. There's just something so great about this ridiculous little cinnamon roll. Like, the poses, the things he says, and to a lesser extent, like Mamoru, because we get a lot more of him in these episodes. He's not just saying a line and then leaving. He actually has, like, a bit of conversation. I mean, I know that might sound strange to say that I'm really enjoying the episodes of the show we're watching while we're doing a podcast, or like for the podcast that we're doing. But yeah, these were very enjoyable, and I had a great time watching
I really like them too.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot of them were kind of themed around love and romance, because my shoujo heart just loves this stuff and just eats it up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But episode 19, Tuxedo Mask and Mamoru are great, but I wanted to like smack Usagi, especially when they were hanging on that elevator and she was just like hanging there on his neck like a limp little noodle and just like crying, and he's literally just like struggling so hard to support his weight and hers, and I'm like, girl, Usagi, like, help your man out. Like, climb on him or something to get on that ledge. Like, you're not even supporting him. You're just whining. And I was like, please, Usagi.
Yeah, that was the episode that I realized that I don't think I'll have as hard of time as I thought I would breaking through the nostalgia glasses. Because all the way up until, like that we've seen so far, she's happy to have Rei and Ami do it. And she just kind of runs around and tries not to get hit during the attacks while they kind of take care of everything. And that stuff is usually over really quickly. Like the episode with the wedding dress, that final fight is over in like 30 seconds. Like it is so quick.
I was like, what? Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like this kind of stuff, during the actual fights, it doesn't really go on long enough for it to be a super big problem. And during the episode proper, a lot of times it's played for laughs. So, like in the doll episode, when she's talking
which was
to
creepy.
Luna, yeah,
it was so creepy.
I forgot how creepy that episode was. Oh my gosh.
My god.
But, trigger warning, if you don't like dolls, just skip this episode. Trust me, you're not going to miss much, and you won't have visions of vampire dolls in your brain.
Those teeth. Oh my god, yes.
Mm-hmm. But that episode 19 in particular, I did want to just reach out and throttle her. And so it was sort of nice because I realized, oh no, I can still separate the show from my nostalgia to a certain extent, because this is getting ridiculous. And like some of the things she says in that episode, Tuxedo Mask says, go Sailor Moon, like, let me take care of this. And she's like, well, if the real Tuxedo Mask says so. And so she just books it. And so I just, quite a few times in that episode when they're hanging off the elevator, when they're inside the elevator, which, speaking of, Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Mask have... I want to try to keep this in mind as we watch through the show. There's at least 2 episodes I can think of where elevators, like, they're trapped in elevators, and it becomes a huge, like, plot point, so to speak. So now I'm wondering if they just never should go on an elevator together.
I didn't have any moon moments in this episode, though. I think I was just fed up with Usagi at this point. But I will say that it was commendable for Rei to go out while very sick, even though I'm pretty sure she just went because she wanted to have Tuxedo Mask for herself.
Well, is it commendable for her to go out while she's sick? Because she could, in theory, like, it's awesome that she's wearing her face mask.
Yes, she was wearing her face mask.
But should she have stayed home because she was sick? Like, that's an interesting question about duty versus, I don't know. That being said, the fact that we obviously don't know what she's sick of, but her contagious period is probably over with. And she's probably not contagious anymore. So it is fine for her to go out. And if she hadn't been, I don't know if Mercury would have been able to lift Tuxedo Mask up by herself. I can just imagine Luna, like, grabbing onto his sleeve and trying to pull.
Just, like, trying to drag him.
I mean, I don't know if this is, like, a mini moon moment for Tuxedo Mask, but... yeah, like, don't skip your gym day because you might find yourself hanging from an elevator shaft with a somewhat useless girl hanging on your back.
Just crying.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that that is an interesting point of whether or not Rei should have gone out while she's sick, and I think that might also be, we might be looking at it through an American lens, because I think in the American viewpoint, like, going to work while sick is kind of expected, I guess, because you don't want to let your department or team down, and you want to, portray that you are passionate and want to do this thing. But at the same time, I think there are other countries where it's encouraged that you stay home, because then you're not, like, spreading your sickness to everyone else in, like, your workplace or school. So, I don't know, maybe that is also a thing to take into consideration.
Also, it's not like Rei was going shopping or to the grocery store or going to school. Like, she was going to do sailor business, which is typically a very isolated thing. Like, the only people she comes in contact with are Ami, Usagi, and Tuxedo Common. So, it would be hilarious if she had given her cold or whatever to Mamoru, and they met him, like, a couple days later, and he's sick. But, yeah, I mean, typically, they don't interact with other people when they're Sailor Scouts. So, now, then again, how do they get from the shrine to that department store? They probably had to take mass transit. So Rei did sort of maybe was around a lot of people, because even though I think it's what, like 8 at night or something.
Yeah, it's like something late.
I'm sure that trains and buses are still hopping in Shinjuku at that point,
especially on a Friday night.
So yeah. I'm trying to think anything else. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I do want to bring up for things, but I guess I
will also say, like, for episode 19, I wrote in my notes in all caps, "Why is a grown-ass man hitting on a middle schooler?"
Yeah, the whole Nephrite Naru thing is, there are people in the fandom that stan it, and they will die on that ship. Obviously, no. I mean, you like what you like, but I think some of what he says is really creepy. Like, it would be one thing if what he was saying, Naru was just taking it that way, even though that's not really what he was saying. But there are things, like, he says, "Oh, well, I've had my eye on you for a while," or, like, "You're the cutest girl," and it just...
it's just cringe.
Yeah,
so
and obviously, if we're getting deep into this, like, he's not a normal dude. He is a, like, Negaverse soldier or whatever. So it's not like he's a, like, 28-year-old hitting on a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
He's, for whatever reason, I think at this point, he might... does he suspect that she's Sailor Moon?
He does. He wants her to, like, transform, I think.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of earlier in the episode when she goes to the mall earlier to meet him. Or just, like, shows up there. I can't remember, because she asks him, "Are you Tuxedo Common? Did you send out these letters?" And so he might suspect at that time. And so that's why he says that, because he's trying to get her to come back later on that evening. Right. So I guess there might be a reason for him to say that, but we still have, like, 5 episodes, and this just increases. Like, this kind of thing just increases.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can tackle that bigger picture once we get to the next episode. Yeah, I think it can sort of be forgiven in this episode, because when he says that, he thinks she's Sailor Moon, and he's trying to get her to come back later so he can trap her. That being said... Oh, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say 2 things about this episode before we move on. First off, the Deke dub is a lot less cringy when it comes to Sailor Moon and the things that she says, like in the elevator and while she's hanging on his back. It's a lot less cringy. So I appreciated that while I was watching the Deke dub. And 2, this is the episode that, if you weren't blind, they confirmed that Mamoru is Tuxedo Mask. And it's really interesting because it is not something he chooses to do. It's almost like a different personality sort of takes over, and he's forced to transform. And I don't know, I just find it really interesting because at this point, I don't know when it is, but he doesn't know he's Tuxedo Mask.
It's like later in the seasons.
And by the time the reveal Usagi is the princess, blah, blah, blah stuff, he knows by that point, I think. Yeah. But I don't know when in the next, like, 10 episodes that happens. But, so he doesn't know. And it's gotta be kind of scary for him to just have these horrendous, like, migraines, basically, that just come on, and then he blacks out and loses time. Yeah. That's gotta be, and then he wakes up in a different place. That's gotta be so terrifying. And I'm just imagining, like, it would be so interesting to see a Sailor Moon from his perspective. Like, What was the name of that book that Midnight Sun, the Twilight from Edward's perspective?
Yes.
Be interesting to have a Midnight Sun version of Sailor Moon where it's just Mamoru going to neurologist trying to figure out. I mean, it'd be very sad. Trying to figure out what's wrong with him and just having these blackout moments and everything. But I was thinking, is his personality like Mamoru always fighting to get back? Because I'm thinking about the tennis episode where he shows up and he's fighting, but at one point he falls to the ground, and it looks like he's having one of those kind of like migraine attacks. So is Mamoru fighting to regain control at that point? Is it kind of that kind of situation in his mind? But I have seen comments online about it's possible, because we also see in the first episode of this week, so in episode 15, the park episode, he starts to have one of those migraines when he's in the boat with Rei. And so I wonder if the migraines are instead triggered to the scouts transforming. Because I think Sailor Moon and Mercury transform, and that's when he gets the migraine in episode 15. And when he collapses in the tennis episode, that could be Mercury and Mars also transforming. Because Sailor Moon has already... So it's sort of like the scouts have transformed, there's evil afoot, you need to help them. But this also goes into the kind of sad thing of, there are episodes that we don't see Tuxedo Mask. So he's having these horrific migraines, but like, what happens then? Does he turn into Tuxedo Common and he's just running around Tokyo trying to find the girls? Or is he fighting? The reason he doesn't show up in those episodes is because he's fighting it off. Like, maybe he's not close enough, and so the pull isn't as strong to transform into Tuxedo Common. So he's able to, like, fight it off, take some migraine medication, and he's able to stay himself.
That's an interesting theory.
Yeah. Anyway, not related to moon moments at all, but I felt like we should mark the episode in which it is doubly 100% confirmed that Mamoru is Tuxedo Common. But he does not know, although he's perfectly fine with transforming on the streets. Although, I guess you don't actually know if he transforms on the street. So his secret identity may be safe. But now I'm just imagining, like, he has the migraine, he drops to his knees, he drops his books, which is the real tragedy of this episode. Who knows, like, his books probably aren't there when he comes back. And so he sort of, like, he doesn't transform because he's in public, and so he pops up, and he's not Mamoru anymore. He's Tuxedo Mask, and he has to go help save Sailor Moon and the girls. I just imagine him, like, launching himself, because Tuxedo Mask can jump/fly. I mean, it's never quite, his powers are never quite explained. So he's just, like, scaling a building as Mamoru, trying to get to the roof in order to transform.
I'm just thinking of how much he must be sweating in that suit. Like, tuxedos are no joke. There's so many layers. And just the amount of exertion it must take to just carry all of that while fighting and scaling a building. Just, good job, Mamoru. Plus gloves.
Now, like, him holding up himself and Usagi in the elevator shaft, obviously that's such a huge, like, stress on his body and his muscle. Like, he's gonna wake up tomorrow and he's not gonna be able to move. Mamoru's just gonna be like, why can't I move my arms? Like, he's gonna have no, like, strength to do anything.
Poor guy.
He's gonna be like, what is happening to me? Poor Mamoru. But we can't feel too bad for him because he's dating a 14-year-old.
Yes.
And he is in college. So, do you want to...
So, on that note, episode 18, did you have any mood moments with Shingo and Mika? I think it was implied that they were dating? Or that they liked each other?
Well, I kind of thought that they were either just friends, or maybe maybe she has a tiny crush on him, maybe he has a tiny crush on her. But I think them being the other kids in their class, I think they were just teasing them when they were saying,
Okay.
sitting in a tree or whatever, that kind of thing. So, I think Shingo just was embarrassed by that, because he can't show emotions or how he really feels. So, I don't think they were dating.
Yeah, that's
they're
what I
also,
was thinking,
in
too.
elementary school, so I don't know how much we want to
At least
ascribe
they're
to
around
that.
the same age. So, no shade here whatsoever.
And also this episode, the doll episode, I do have, this is what we see of it, like the second date between Mamoru and Rei. And the first date, quote unquote, I could argue that Mamoru doesn't think it's a date. It's just this random girl fell in front of me, went to have tea, and then she was like, hey, I know this great place. Do you want to check it out with me? And he's like, yeah, sure. I ain't got nothing else to do. Like, I could argue it's not really a date. Like, he doesn't think of it as a date. So the 14 college student age, let's say he's 18 or 19. That's still 4 years. It's still a gap when you're that young. So I can forgive him this episode. I can't forgive him for episode 18 because he has to know it's a date in this episode. It's the only way he would be allowed my good graces is if he thought he was going with a bunch of other people. Like if Rei told him, hey, there's this cool exhibition, like, do you want to come? A whole bunch of other people are going to be, like, if she thought it was, like, if he thought it was, like, a big group going, and he was like, yeah, sure, I don't have anything to do, why not? I like to get out and do stuff. And then he shows up and it's just Rei. That would be the only excuse he could have. That being said, that's that's fan fiction. Like, you don't see anything of that in this episode. So, he's on a second date with Rei, and that is not really forgivable. But also, he's going to be dating Usagi, who is also like 14, 15 at this point. The ages are kind of a moving target in this show, because Usagi does start out as being 14, but there's like a weird thing with birthdays, because Takeuchi was very specific about birthdays, like when a person was born and like what their sign was and things like that. And there's also the Japanese school system of when years end, or like what school you're in based on your birthday, like how old you are. And I've read stuff that said that she wasn't too concerned about that. So it's like, maybe, like, Usagi might be 14 when the show starts, but she definitely has a birthday in season 3. I can't remember. She definitely has a birthday during the show. So it's possible she's 15 or 16 by the time the show ends. Still, Mamoru is obviously older than her. Anyway, it's just a thing. You gotta deal with it. At least, in the anime, it's a very chaste relationship, so it's fine. Though most of fandom agrees that in the manga, they absolutely do bang. So, they do have a sexual relationship. And also, Takeuchi is very, like, sex positive kind of thing. A sex positive kind of person. So, it would not be out of line to argue that. Anyway, again, drifting off track.
I did have a moon moment for this episode.
Oh,
this
okay,
is my
go
one
ahead.
moon
Go
moment.
ahead.
Although you'll probably argue that it is a decent human being kind of thing. But I'm going to say it's Usagi staying to comfort Shingo. Because throughout all these episodes up until this point, Usagi her family isn't the most supportive of her. And especially her little brother.
You're not wrong. You are not wrong.
And it seems like every time Usagi tries to do something, it's either her brother or like parents or someone in her family is there to basically put her down. And when Usagi stayed to listen to Shingo and why he was feeling so sad or just acting not great. I mean, yes, Mika's two friends did come up to Usagi and Ami earlier in the episode and asked her to check up on why Shingo was being a dick, but I think the fact that she stayed to help him, even though he basically hasn't really given her too much of a reason to be kind to him, would be a moon moment for me. And she was just very supportive, especially when Shingo made that not great looking Sailor Moon clay doll. She did say, I think she said it looked like an animal or a pig or some sort.
A pig.
Yeah, a pig. And when Shingo said, it's supposed to be Sailor Moon, Usagi took it back and was trying to reassure Shingo that, it does actually look like Sailor Moon. No, it looks great. Like, Mika's going to love it. And the fact that she was there with Shingo through every step of the way to have him apologize to Mika. Also, granted, it might be because of the request of Mika's two friends, but it just makes me... It's just something that she did not have to do, and she didn't have to go through that extra mile. She could have just left it as being, Shingo's sad, let me stay for a little bit, and then go on her merry way. But she doesn't, and I think that would exemplify a moon moment. What do you think?
You're right in that I was going to immediately argue that this was a decent human being thing, but I think you got me with the argument that Shingo and her family are not really nice to Usagi, and I know Usagi can be melodramatic and have crazy ideas, but some of the things they say are really mean, like self-esteem hitting kind of mean.
Yeah.
So for her to go out of her way and, obviously she's mad at first that her little brother could have done something like this, but then tells him, okay, you need to go say you're sorry. And when she comes back and is trying to reassure him, like, she even brings him, drinks, and they talk about it. Like, I love the shot in this episode where she brings in the two drinks, and she's like, well, tell me what happened. And then it cuts to the drinks being gone. And so it's just a really awesome visual of they've been talking this entire time. And Shingo was worried that Mika hates him for what he did, and Usagi's trying to give him advice. And the fact that she's so positive, it's like, yeah, you should make her something, and then she leaves, and she immediately has this worried look on her face, and Luna says, what's wrong? She's like, I didn't tell Shingo this, but I'm really worried about Mika. It's a really great moment of, because obviously you don't want to worry people, but, and while Usagi doesn't immediately connect it to a Dark Kingdom thing, she's recognizing that this doesn't seem right. Like, something is wrong here.
And she kind of wanted to preserve Shingo's feelings, I guess, since she could sense that this was also not the time to bring up that she was concerned about Mika. Yeah.
And so, I had in my notes written just like the brother-sister relationship, and I had, possible mini moon moment, ? But ultimately I didn't choose that because I thought brother-sister relationship, it's a decent human being thing. But I think you won me over with the fact that Usagi's family is not really that nice to her, but she actually goes out of her way to comfort Shingo and try to help him with his problems.
I was so surprised that she was this supportive of him. I think it just goes back to her family not being supportive of her, and would reflect in her recuperation of other people in her family. And the fact that she took that and was like the opposite of it to her brother, just thought it was notable. That was a moon moment.
Yeah. This is also the episode that when I saw it, I was like, oh, I wanted to bring it up. In this episode, Nephrite and Mamoru cross paths. And there's a brief moment, and it made me realize I don't know how much, like, what your experience is with Sailor Moon, because I know you've seen the show, but I don't know if you've seen the entire show, or if you read the manga, or if you saw Crystal at some point, because this little moment goes nowhere in the original anime. But it is a small crumb of manga plot, and I'm curious if you know what it is.
Enlighten me.
Well, I'm also just curious that, like, because I know, like you said, you've seen Sailor Moon, but I didn't know how much you've seen. So I'm actually curious. I'll answer, but I want to hear how much of Sailor Moon you've experienced.
Well, I've seen the show. I've seen a couple episodes of Crystal. I read parts of the manga, but I haven't gone deep into it. I've only just read random chapters where I just needed a little more, but not as deep as you.
So this little moment, it harkens back to the fact that Beryl's four generals, Jadeite, Nephrite, Zoisite, and Kunzite, were Prince Endymion's generals on Earth.
Oh! That makes so much sense. Oh.
So I can't quite remember why Beryl is able to turn them and use them.
Was there something I don't remember? A lot later on, there's some background, and there's like some flashback episode or something to the Moon Kingdom. Wasn't there some fallout over them loving someone? Or am I just completely making that up?
So in the original anime, this is not touched on at all. As far as I can remember, this is the sole moment that, like, and if you knew, like, if you saw this moment, you're like, oh, well, it's referring to this. But if you don't know that, then you don't really know what this moment is. As far as I know, in the original sub, none of this is talked about. I'm not 100% sure. We'll get there soon enough. Or at least I will, because I'm going through Crystal and the manga and everything. But I want to say it has something to do with Endymion and Usagi being in love. As prince and princess, because he's Prince of Earth, she's Princess of the Moon, and it's not like a Romeo and Juliet situation. The moon and the earth aren't at odds, but it is a point of contention. And I want to say that's how Beryl turns them. She preys on, like, some negative emotions that they have. However, it's also, I can't remember when this comes up in the manga and in Crystal, but apparently the four Sailor Senshi are paired with the four generals. However, this is a point of contention in the fandom, because I read somewhere once that Takeuchi just, as something for the magazine or for an art book or something like that, she just drew the four Senshi and the four generals paired together. Like, they're all in the same picture. They're paired up into, couples. And she said that people went crazy for it. From that, I thought that she never intended to pair them up in the manga until people went nuts for these pairings. And then she's like, oh, well, then I'll just make it to be a manga thing. But I'm also not sure if that's true. Because it's just the timing of the manga, because the manga, like, the first season is so short, and this comes up in the first season, first, like, 13 chapters or whatever. I don't know if that's the case. If anyone in the audience knows more about this, I would love to hear about it. But the long and short of it is, the four generals for Beryl were actually Endymion's four generals. They don't remember... I don't think they don't remember anything.
No, they don't.
From that life. And so, at this point in the show, they have this moment, and it could be because of the different reasons, because it's established in the show that Mamoru is psychic to a certain extent. And so you could read it as he's just picking up on the fact that this guy is actually like a bad guy.
The bad vibes.
Yeah. But Nephrite also kind of has this moment, and you could argue that because of his, I don't know, connection with the stars or whatever, like he has this extrasensory perception, and so he's picking up on Mamoru, maybe because he's Tuxedo Mask, or maybe they're sort of feeling this connection that they used to have in, 1,000 years ago or whatever. Honestly, I don't remember how we got on this topic. Oh, I just wanted to bring it up and then spent 10 minutes talking about it. So, yeah, like it's a fascinating bit of lore that is never gone into in the original anime, and it's only present in the manga, and thus Crystal. And it's something, I mean, I don't really like it. Like, I like the idea of them being Endymion's generals in the past, and then being turned by Beryl, but I don't like them being paired up with the Senshi, just because we have to pair everyone up. And I think it's a little sad if you go back, because there are some villains in Sailor Moon that are cleansed, that become good guys. And there are some that are just killed. And I think it would have been a really emotional moment if Jadeite has been put away by Beryl, basically killed. Nephrite, spoiler alert, is not going to make it past the next 5 episodes. Zoisite is killed by Beryl. And Kunzite is taken out by, I think, the Scouts? So it would be this really tragic thing for them to have done all this. And like, oh, these are the bad guys, we have to get through them. And then to have a moment where it's like, we knew you in a past life. Like, you weren't always bad. And it's already been shown that Sailor Moon can heal people, but she doesn't. And so, I don't know, a fascinating bit of, I mean, if we're going dark, like a bit of maybe almost PTSD of Usagi saying, like, I could have saved them. Like, I had, at this point, like, I had the crystal, I had my moon stick, I could have cleansed them, I could have saved them. But we didn't. We just went straight for, the nuclear option. So, anyway, lots of awesome bits that if I were to ever be given full reign to create a Sailor Moon anime, I would add. So moving on, not much, the photographer episode 17. I don't really have much, except Usagi is uber confident. Like, she's so just awesome in this episode. It's like, who are you and what have you done with Usagi? Because she's just so on the ball. She's got it.
She is.
And it's not even like she starts out as unsure and unconfident. And then she gets better as the fight goes along. She immediately starts out, she's dodging all the stuff.
Yeah.
She kicks the camera.
And she was, like, smart about the camera taking pictures, too. Mm-hmm. She sees the reflection and thinks to herself, what if this monster takes a picture of themselves? That wasn't something Usagi wouldn't usually think about. It seems out of character, almost. But I will also say, like, this is the episode where the family is very, very savage to Usagi right before the whole, her supporting Shingo. So I think that also contributed to the moon moment musings when I was watching that last episode, too.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that the message of this episode of saying, a girl's beauty isn't just her looks, it's her, it's her heart and having guts to do what's right. But I wouldn't say that's a moon moment. I feel like a lot of the episode was the people going into it with ulterior motives. Or saying that with ulterior motives. Because Usagi says it mainly because she's trying to convince her family that she could be a model. And, just because you don't think I'm beautiful, that's not the only thing that models have. And then when the photographer says it at the end of the episode, I think he was just Kijin, Kijin was saying it because he was in a press conference, and I don't know, he seemed kind of sketch to me in the beginning too. But that's just me. But yeah, it had a good message. I just don't think they delivered it well.
And I think it's funny because Mamoru says that to Usagi, and then she parrots it back. And it's funny that he says that. I wonder if going forward, like in the future, he remembers that and just kind of cringes at himself, because he's saying, Usagi, you don't have guts and you don't have heart. And repeatedly, the big bad is defeated because she has guts and she has heart. I mean, Galaxia is arguably the most dangerous foe that they ever face. And she basically just wears her down in terms of, from what I remember, it has been a very long time since I've seen Stars, but she basically just wears her down with guts and heart. And I think it's actually, so when he parrots that back, when Kijin parrots that back at the press conference at the end, I think it works better in the Deke dub, because he says, yes, I'm canceling the contest, and they're like, oh, well, did you find your muse? And he says, well, yes, but I'm not sure she actually exists. I think she came from the moon, and I'm going to focus on moonscapes for right now. It smooths it over, and so it doesn't seem so awkward. And I can't remember what she says. I didn't think to write down what she says during that. I think she does just parrot back whatever Mamoru says to her, and it's the same sort of thing. She just says whatever he says to her. But
yeah, could have been a moon moment, but missed the mark in the delivery, is my conclusion.
Yeah. So I guess the wedding dress episode is where my mini moon moment is when the teacher's fiance is bringing flowers to her and knocking on her apartment door. She opens the door and she's obviously so changed. I think she's cut her hair. She's wearing like a crop top, short shorts, and I should also specify my mini moon moment exists in the Deke dub, not the sub, because in the sub he just says you look different, and then they start to have their conversation. But in the Deke dub he says, "Oh, you look different, but I like it," and that's my mini moon moment. And when I first heard it, I thought, well, yeah, you should. I mean, you can't, like, if she wants to go this way, like, it's kind of like a decent human being kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
If she wants to do something, let her do it.
Yeah, of course.
But then, as I started to think about it, I realized that it is sort of like a mini moon moment, I think, because yes, like if you should accept, like, if your friends change, if family members change, like they want to like dye their hair or start wearing different clothes, or they start listening to Norwegian death metal, or if they have some significant change, like, you are not there to police them. As their friend, you should support them. And if they, become a super, mega animal activist who angrily stares at you whenever you eat a hamburger, then you can still be friends, but, people change, they drift apart, and it's just a part of life. And that being said, there's also a point where it goes from being supportive to, if someone makes a significant change, you should also try to find out why they've made this change, because something could be happening in their life, something negative that is making them this change. And, if your friend who loves sundresses and halter tops or whatever is suddenly wearing long sleeve shirts and pants and is not showing any skin whatsoever, maybe there's a reason for that. And so, just, I guess this mini moment, again, I guess this would maybe fall into just being a decent human being. of being a friend, but I also think, and we've said this before, especially now during the pandemic, it's so hard to really be in touch with people on a regular basis and make sure that they're doing okay. And like I said, this could just be a decent human being kind of thing, but I think it's an important lesson to remember that if someone you know goes through a significant change, you're their friend, they're your friend, you just roll with it. But you should also try to figure out why they've made this change. And if, they are just like, well, I watched a documentary, man, and the conditions that cows and chickens are kept in our society are just, terrible. Then it's like, okay, well, I understand why you suddenly become vegan and why you're only wearing, you're not wearing any kind of animal-based products. Are there animal-based products you can wear? Leather, I guess?
Leather.
Yeah.
Leather.
I was trying to think, are there animal byproducts in, like, polyester? But sometimes there are reasons that are not so obvious, and you should try to figure out why. So maybe throw this to the audience. I don't know if this, and like I said, I don't think it's not a full-on moon moment. I think it could be a mini moon moment, or maybe it's just, a reminder that you should support people, but you should also, for the health of them and for your relationship, try to figure out why they've changed.
You definitely bring up a lot of good points. I low-key forgot about it until you brought it up. I don't think it's enough to be a full-on moon moment. And I'm not really sure if I would categorize it as a mini moment. I will agree that it is a very good reminder that as someone's friend, or in this case, significant other, it is not your place to be their judge. You are in their life because you are their partner, or they trust you and you are on the same level playing field of, like, friendship and everything. You are not their parent or anyone that says that can police them. So I think you bring up a lot of good points in that this should be something to be noted. But I wouldn't say it's a mini moon moment.
Okay.
But yeah.
I am 100% understanding of that. It was just such an interesting thing of a throwaway line that is not in the original sub, but in the Tik dub, and I was like, oh. And it was also, I thought, just funny because, him just, ooh, I like it. I don't know, it just, I felt like I should bring it up, but like I said, I did go back and forth between, well, you should like it, like, you don't have any say in what she does, like, whether she cuts her hair or whatever.
Yeah.
But it kind of spun into...
it brings up a really good life lesson, which is also what, Moon Moment is here for. I also, let me just note that there was a part in the episode where the woman that gets transformed,
the teacher.
I
think her name is Akiyama, I think.
When she appears in the contest, she says something about taking over both men and women, and that might have also just been a throwaway line, but I was like, yes, queen, we are here for both genders and supporting and all other guys, gals, and non-binary pal representation of love. But that might have just been a throwaway line. I was cheering.
Yeah. I want to say she says something like, because she's talking to the dude. She's like, what makes you think you're good enough for me? All men will bow down for me, and the women will too when they see my beauty, or something like that.
That was the line,
something
yes.
like that.
I was like, this woman is bowing down to you.
So I guess episode 15, I didn't have any moon moments, but I think, and we don't have to talk about this long, because we already talked about it a lot already, but just, Mamoru's in college, and Usagi specifically says, he's too old for Rei. my student handbook specifically mentions that this isn't good.
Will we ever stop talking about the very questionable age differences in this show? Probably not. It will probably be brought up as much as Drusilla brings up the Deke Dub. But nothing, I didn't really have anything super noteworthy in this episode. I mean, there were definitely parts that are decent human being kind of things, like Ami being concerned about the gardener, Mr. Kurtsu? Oh my gosh, I'm completely butchering that. I wrote that down and I just gave up and said Mr. K because I couldn't type fast enough. But that, I think, was more of a decent human being kind of thing. And then Mr. K wanting to save the park, also another kind of decent human being thing because he's worked in this garden for so long and he has a deep emotional connection with this park. So of course he would want to save it. There wasn't anything too notable. Oh, and then in the beginning when Mamoru saved Luna, I also think that was more of a decent human being kind of thing. But I guess you could also say, you don't really have to risk that much for a cat, I guess. I don't know. What do you think?
That whole scene was interesting because it's like, why is Luna so dumb that she's in the middle, that she just walks in the middle of the street?
Yeah.
And the truck, I mean, it was at night, so I could argue maybe he didn't see a black cat on the street that well. But you'd think that if you saw a dude booking it across the road, he would slam on his brakes, but whatever. Obviously, Mamoru saving Luna is a decent human being thing to do. I mean, who hasn't stopped on a highway to move a turtle across the road? You just imagine if Luna had got hit by that truck, like the rest of what the show would be like.
If Luna were gone, it would be a lot longer.
I think, the girls would have to do more heavy lifting in terms of finding Dark Kingdom plots. She's the one who gives the transformation pins.
Yeah.
It would only be the 3 scouts. Mako wouldn't come in when she would. You know what I mean? Or they might know, based on her episode, they might know that she was Sailor Jupiter, but they couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't be able to give her anything to transform. It's very interesting.
I think so too. Also, just quick note, like, LOL, married at 25?
I know. And she's either 18 or 22 when she gets married.
Oh.
When they get married, she is pregnant with Chibiusa.
Girl?
Yeah. 18 or 22. I'm sure someone will let us know in the comments.
So I guess that's going to be it for this episode. Are we descending deeper into lunacy? Don't be phased. Our next episodes will cover 20 to 24. If you want, check out our social media on Twitter and Instagram at moonmomentpod. We would love to hear from you. And we also have a website at moonmomentpodcast.com. There you will find show notes and transcripts for every episode.
Let us know what your moon moment musings are. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe you'll just get a shout out. And if you'd like to support the podcast, please rate, share, subscribe, review, all of that good stuff. Also, hit us up on TikTok. We do have a TikTok. Subscribing and liking and doing all this stuff, it really helps Moon Moment stay afloat amidst the vast ocean of podcasts. I'm Drusilla.
And I'm Gilsey. Come and join us next time. Maybe we'll still be here. I don't know.
We will. We've got 6 more episodes to do.
My mind is just gone. Yes, come back soon. We will be back. Until next time, we will see you, Moon.
Bye.